Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Land and Home Show. Today we are talking all about land here in central Kentucky and parts of eastern Kentucky that you can find for under $100,000. Hi, I'm Stephen J.B. Davis, your land specialist and residential realtor here in central Kentucky and beyond. Today is not so much of a market update, but I guess maybe more of a price check. I pretty much just did a search for land that had a maximum price of $100,000 and did not limit it to any particular county outside of the fact that these are only counties that the Bluegrass Association of Realtors service. So this does not include Western Kentucky. This doesn't include the Louisville area. This just includes that stretch of counties from, I'd say, the northern end of central Kentucky down to the very southern end on the Tennessee border, and then stretching over into I guess a little bit of eastern Kentucky. So let's get started. We're going to start here on the Bluegrass Association of Realtors MLS site. What you're looking at is a map of everything that is for sale within that Bluegrass Association of Realtors territory that I talked about in the introduction. And MLS is actually the source of all of the information that you would otherwise find on Realtor.com, Trulia, whatever your favorite site is. That information is actually coming from what you're staring at on the screen. The exception to that, of course, is for sale by owner, which is something that you'll find on Zillow that you won't find on the MLS, because MLS is for realtors and other real estate professionals, appraisers, things like that. And then, of course, there are some land-specific sites that do not connect or have anything to do with the MLS, where you may find some different information. But most often, if you're using any of those land sites, they are actually duplicates of what's on the MLS for whatever that respective agent's association is. The exception to that would, of course, be whitetail properties. Whitetail folks, they don't participate in MLS systems anywhere. They've amassed enough money and agents and all that kind of stuff to pretty much operate on their own. So sometimes you'll see their stuff on land.com or something. You won't find it on the local MLS of wherever you live, but you'll see it on some of those land sites, and then of course you'll see it on the whitetail site itself. Anyway, what we are staring at is actually like I said, a map of everything that is for sale right now with a maximum price of $100,000. I've put a minimum of 10 acres on the search. So if you notice, let me just orient you around here. This is Lexington, where my mouse is circling. And so if I turn on some cool features here, you'll see Lexington, all of this gray space is the same shape as what outlines it. This is what I mean when I talk about how Fayette County and Lexington are the same thing. If you live anywhere inside Fayette County, that means that you live in Lexington. You'll see to the west, there's Woodford. To the east is Clark. Northeast is Bourbon County. I often talk about these counties that touch, or the immediate Lexington area, and so I'm usually talking about these groups of counties that I'm circling, including Fayette. All right. So that's Lexington. Lexington, horse capital of the world, the place where everyone wants to be, where many people work, even if they live elsewhere. Louisville's way over here. This is kind of that no man's land that I was talking about, where it's not quite the Louisville area, but it's not really the Lexington area. It's just central Kentucky. It doesn't really belong to either metropolitan area. So counties like Anderson or Washington or Marion or even Nelson. Nelson is closer to Jefferson, but you wouldn't call it the greater Louisville area. To get from here into Louisville, I think is still a solid hour, or maybe even more. Nelson's where a lot of bourbon is made. Anyway, I am digressing. So I'm just trying to orient you around everywhere, because there's a lot of visual information. The first thing that I want to bring your attention to is just how little land there is for $100,000 immediately around Lexington. I say this a lot, and I don't say it to crush anyone's dreams or to make anyone feel bad, but a lot of people want to be within a certain distance. And usually that distance is like, oh, I want to be like 15 miles out, or I want to be, 30 minutes away. 30 minutes away in acreage from Lexington is going to cost you a lot of money. As you can see, there's one thing here in Clark County for $79,900. I believe this is 10 acres. We're not going to get too deep into each individual property, but from what I know about this one, it's in a subdivision, like a rural subdivision. So there are deed restrictions on this property. It's not just raw land with no restrictions. It's basically land being sold in a neighborhood. But in any case, that's about the closest thing you've got there. Then you've got all of this stuff up here in Harrison, 1, 2, 3, and then a few things in far north Scott County, and to the south in Scott County is where Georgetown is. So I talk about Georgetown a lot. I don't know why I'm pointing when I haven't done a video like this before. Georgetown is where my mouse is circling, but then there are some outlying towns like Stamping Ground, Minersville, Biddle, Sadieville, all beautiful places, but they're on that northern part. And I'd say, from here into the center of town, you're probably looking at a good 40 minutes away. All of that aside, what you will then notice is the vast majority, clearly there's exceptions, right? I just pointed out some of these exceptions, but there are very few. The vast majority of that cheaper land, that $100,000 or less land, is going to be much further away from either of our two major cities. Now, granted, we can't see everything that's happening over here because I don't have that search turned on. So down and around where all this stuff is you're talking an hour away. If you're way down here on the border, you're talking about 2.5 hours away. Estill County, probably 45 minutes to an hour away, depending on how close you are to a major highway, so like a U.S. highway or at least a really big state road or something like that. But then, of course, the further east you get, so I would call Clay County east, I call Owsley east, Breathitt is most certainly east. I mean, you get further and further this way, and you'll probably find cheaper and cheaper land. But what happens as you get further and further east, as I've said before in many videos, is your topography changes. So I think in the last video, we talked a little bit at the end about highest and best use. And so highest and best use, it involves a lot of things, but one of those things is topography. And so way out here where it's quite literally mountainous, we're not just talking about, little hills that are cute. We're talking about the Appalachian Mountains. That's why this is the Appalachian region, the Appalachian state. Not to be confused with the college or university in Boone, North Carolina, of course. But, this is where the Appalachians begin. And because of that, a lot of this land out here is heavily forested and deeply, deeply mountainous. So you're talking about, very rocky soil, old coal grounds, things like that. I'd say if you are interested in living, around an hour away and frankly not super close to like any really big town, but not too far, there are these two counties, actually these three that I like a lot for that type of description. So while these three counties are all, you're talking about an hour plus, certainly could be more from Lexington up here. But if you're in Rockcastle, Pulaski, or Laurel County, what you have are some interesting opportunities. In Pulaski County, you have Somerset. Somerset is a really, really cool place. It's a farming city. Obviously, it's a very large county. You're getting towards that southern end for sure of Kentucky in general, but Somerset's a nice town. It's not going to be nearly as big as Lexington. Lexington is in excess of, I think, 350,000 people now, and then the immediate area, all of this that surrounds it brings us up to about 500,000. If you're in Somerset, I don't even know what the population is, but you're not coming close to that. But you have very normal conveniences and things to do. You're certainly a lot closer to Nashville if that's important to you. And like I said, it's a really big place, and there's a lot of water. There's some cool water tourism to go down there. And if you live in either Laurel County or wanted to build a homestead there or have land there, or you were to purchase property in Rockcastle, you wouldn't be far from Somerset if you weren't in Pulaski County proper. Sorry, I'm like running so many screens right now, and I thought that my camera was going off. So if being close to Lexington proper is not your biggest priority, I'd say the southern end of the central Kentucky region presents a lot of good opportunities for proximity, again, to Somerset. So we're talking about these three counties. Also, the ease of getting other places. So what you'll notice if I zoom in, Rockcastle has I-75 running right through it. And then so does Laurel County. And that makes it easy to get to other places in the Midwest or to get down into Tennessee, whatever. And even though Pulaski County is not on an interstate, there are several major highways, both county highways, U.S. highways, and state highways that all converge into this Somerset little, I won't call it a metro area, but like this Somerset kind of city, town area. So on the south end, I think these are three of the most advantageous for proximity to cities, also proximity to major highways and things like that. If you go north, let me zoom out. There's not a whole lot of opportunity here, just because it is so close to Fayette County, and if we're talking about less than $100,000, but there is some from time to time. Harrison's one of my favorite places in general when you're talking about looking for value. It's just that county doesn't have a whole lot that comes up for sale. It's also a farming county, and so there's lots of local idiosyncrasies that come with that. But in any case, this is kind of a mirror of that southern end that I was talking about, because if you come right through Scott County here, I-75 is, oh man, my camera just keeps shutting off on its own. If you come through I-75 on this northern end, what happens is you pass through Scott County, and then that takes you right into the start of northern Kentucky, which again is not a part of the territory of the Bluegrass Association of Realtors. That's a part of the Northern Kentucky Association of Realtors. But what I can tell you is that up here, land does not sell very often either. Up here in Owen, Grant, Pendleton, they're very small counties for one. Secondly, they have a lot of very rich recreational value. So you see lots of ridgeland up here, which means lots of hunting opportunity here, cover, water, all the things that, make hunting land good land. And frankly, this is kind of where the deer population was reintroduced, but I'm getting a little bit away from myself. So we looked at the southern end and the opportunities there. The northern end, and when I'm talking about ends, I'm talking about relative to Fayette County, so south of Fayette County within the central Kentucky world, and then north. So not a lot of opportunity north, quite a bit south, but it's going to be far down here, closer to the border. And even though it's far from Lexington, the takeaway here is that it is close to Somerset, and Somerset is both lovely and has lots of ways to get into it. So Rockcastle, Pulaski, and Laurel are your best bets, in my opinion. Now, if you get a little bit more east, what happens is, like I talked about, things become cheaper. They become a lot more mountainous. And what you also lose in a lot of cases, not all, again, there's exceptions. People love to point that out, and I think we're all aware that there are exceptions. But largely what you'll find in these eastern places is high-speed internet is going to be an issue, and high-speed internet is the way that many of us work. Although you got to keep your eye on Starlink. I hear that Starlink is coming to Kentucky in a more substantive way sometime soon. But connectivity can be an issue. Proximity to good healthcare, just in terms of it being close and readily accessible, that is certainly an issue when you get to a lot of these eastern counties. And then just getting around. If you zoom in, or if I zoom in, you'll see that the road system here, while there are very good roads, I love that about eastern Kentucky. I mean, they're just as smooth as butter, but there are not a lot of highways to get through places. So not only do you get lots of meandering small roads like here or here or over here where my mouse is, they meander. They're not direct, in other words, and then there's really only one way to get in and out. You find yourself on a lot of dirt roads when you have to stray away from this major highway systems that somewhat run through these areas. And, your commute, even though as the crow flies, may be like, 30 miles, but really it takes you the equivalent of, I don't know, maybe 60 miles to get from place to place, because you're not really traveling in any direct course. You're traveling on a lot of winding roads. And when you're not on those major highways, again, you're often on just really small, old logging roads that got turned into proper roads, but that aren't as maintained. So you're driving slower, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the overview from a map standpoint. So now I just want to take you down kind of a list of these places that are for sale. We've looked at the map view. I just want to get a little bit more zoomed down. So some of these places that are far away will absolutely hit that $100,000 mark. They're going to be expensive because they're typically coming with quite a bit more land. What you will notice as I scroll down is that when they are really close to Lexington, i.e. a neighboring county, you're getting a lot less acreage for that money. So if we start at the top, $100,000, these first 5 up here, they are 31 acres, 47 acres, 84 acres, 50 acres. And then this one in Harrison County, which is, it doesn't touch Fayette, but it is just barely removed. If I go back here for just a second, Harrison County is right here. So it's just barely removed from Lexington. Lexington's where my mouse is. Harrison County is here. If we go back to our list, so proximity is incredibly close to Lexington. And look at what you're getting for $100,000. 10 acres. Location, location, location. That's the point here. Whereas these other 4 and these top 5 most expensive ones, you're getting 31 acres. That's in Powell County. And while Powell is a solid hour away, what makes it special is that's where Red River Gorge is. It's a pretty up and coming place. A lot of people have realized its recreational value, have started to do more cabins, like imagine Gatlinburg, Tennessee. There's more tourism, which is making the real estate more expensive there. So that's Powell County, neighboring to Wolf. Whereas Breathitt County, 47 acres, pretty far east for $100,000. Go to Owsley, 84 acres for $100,000, very far east. Rockcastle County, that's straight down 75. That was in that group of 3 that I thought presented very good opportunity for convenience of, hospitals, all that kind of stuff, because Somerset is so close. Rockcastle County is 50 acres for $100,000. I actually showed this place once. It's pretty hilly. Not a whole lot of places to build. You keep going down though, and it's Eastern Kentucky County after Eastern Kentucky County. You get a little bit more acreage, whereas boom, here comes Scott County, which is directly north of Lexington. What do you get for $99,900? 10 acres. So I think you're kind of starting to see the idea here. I'm running out of battery, but that's all I've got for you today. We're going to do more videos like this, and when the freaking weather warms up, I'm going to be showing you some properties with my drone. So please stay tuned for that. And I think those are all my announcements. I hope you have a wonderful week, and thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, landonhomes.co. Peace out.